Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. Since this is our very first episode, I want to take a moment to introduce myself and tell you why I'm here. My name is Kim Menninger, and I specialize in women's leadership coaching. As a coach, I speak virtually every day with women who struggle with confidence issues. Issues like imposter syndrome, which is that sense that you're a fraud and may be exposed, the inner critic, lack of psychological safety, feelings of disconnectedness, all contribute to a pervasive epidemic of self-doubt. The sad and fascinating thing about this is that most of the women I talk to think they're the only ones who feel this way, or that their case is somehow unique. I know that their cases are not unique because not only do I hear all of these stories every day, I've also lived this experience myself. Before I became a coach, I spent over 10 years in the high-tech industry, a world I never planned to join. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and always dreamed of becoming a clinical psychologist. During college, I overloaded on psych courses to prepare for grad school. After college, I took a couple of years off to get some additional experience and take the standardized tests. 2 years in, I found myself at a critical crossroads. I could enroll in a PhD program and spend the next 5 years as a full-time student, a daunting path that I felt financially woefully unprepared for, or I could capitalize on the dot-com boom at the time and join a tech company where I had worked during my college breaks. During my first couple of years in high tech, I was drowning in self-doubt. I looked around and saw so many people who knew so much more than I did. Many had studied business and had very intentionally moved in this direction. Others were highly technical and spoke a language I did not understand. My soft skills, thanks to my psych degree, propelled me forward very quickly, but I often felt like a fraud. I thought it was only a matter of time before everyone realized I had no business being there and I was escorted out the door. Fortunately, that did not happen. I had a thriving career, and with a lot of support and a willingness to leverage my resources, I found my groove and was able to recognize the unique strengths that I brought to the table. I left on my own because at the time my older son was born, I was experiencing a career crisis. I wasn't finding meaning in the work I was doing, and I had the privilege of taking some time off to reflect on what I wanted to do next. Ultimately, I realized that what I really wanted to be was the resource to women that I didn't have during my own corporate career. Because I hear story after story from women who struggle with imposter syndrome and other confidence issues, I wanted to create a community where women can tell their stories. The effect of this on the storyteller is tremendous relief. Sharing your feelings and experiences out loud significantly dilutes their power. And the effect on the listener is a realization that we are not alone, that even the most successful and outwardly confident among us struggle beneath the surface. Wherever you are on your confidence journey, I hope you find strength and support in the stories that you hear here. And if you'd like to release your own burden of hiding self-doubt, I would love for you to share your story with us. Contact me at kim@executivecareersuccess.com and we will set that up. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, welcome. I'm so happy that you're joining us today. And before we jump in, I just want to remind the listeners that I have advised anyone who interviews for this podcast that they have the option to remain anonymous. I don't want anyone to feel that they have to reveal more than they're comfortable revealing. So I would love to just start by asking you, what are you comfortable sharing with us about yourself today?
I'm based in the UK, so I'm really happy that I can contribute to your podcast. And I know it's in the US, but from what I know, and also when I talk to friends or colleagues, I know that I'm not the only one, so I think it's great that this is a global program that you're doing there, Kim. Um, I am working as a consultant. I used to be a long-standing employee for an organization, and I left that organization in 2016 and founded my own company. So now I'm working with organizations to improve their security and well-being operational procedures, and that includes agile and flexible working. And that I really thoroughly enjoy that, being able to work as a consultant. It's put me into the public arena, speaking at conferences, which is a great opportunity. But this is, one of the big things when I experience, questioning myself and how on earth did I get there onto the podium speaking to people and so on. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right that this is an international phenomenon as well. It is not unique to the US. So I really appreciate your sharing that with us. And it's no surprise to me that as you have moved into a role that has a bigger stage, right? You are being put in front of new audiences and having an opportunity for greater visibility, that would trigger some self-doubt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for the main reason, I asked myself, how on earth did this person actually come to me and ask me to speak? It just all started with that last year where I thought, oh wow, this is a great opportunity, but can I actually do that? And I'm speaking in front of a big room of people, and they are there to know more about it, but then there are also experts in the field, and then that's immediately putting me into the state where I think this is making me really nervous.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is pretty classic imposter syndrome, that sense that, what do I have to share with the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they want me to be the person to talk to to this topic or to have this perspective? And so it sounds like you are certainly experiencing or have experienced imposter syndrome firsthand. What does the term imposter syndrome mean to you? When you hear that expression, what comes up for you?
What comes up is the questioning, the doubting myself, whether do I actually have the knowledge, do I have the right to speak in that way, what do other people say, are they questioning me, could I fail, right? I think it's a feeling, when the word comes to me, where I think it's got a lot to do with the fear to fail. And to then, once you're in the public arena, then that's known as well that I have failed. And it's got also a lot to do with authority for me, where, the thought that I'm speaking to people in a place where I think they are, hierarchically higher up, that's when it can happen as well. So for me, it's got to do something with failure and with hierarchy, and basically saying, who am I to tell you, and how will you question me, and I may not be able to answer your questions.
Those are really great observations, and I think two very common challenges that are associated with imposter syndrome is that sense of that fear of failure, right? Especially in a more public arena where you have gone from being more of an internal employee to now being a thought leader and expert, and that pressure can be really high. And then, like you said, that status intimidation that comes with knowing that your audience has a lot of expertise in their own right, and that they're pretty high up within their organization. So naturally, that's going to trigger some self-doubt. What's interesting to me is it doesn't sound like the fact that you have identified these triggers and have experienced this kind of self-doubt has stopped you. It sounds like you've gone for it anyway.
Yes, I had really good people being with me, and the first time I spoke at a conference last year, I said it. I said, I'm so nervous. I didn't say to them that I feel like an imposter, but I said, I'm so nervous, right? And I really was. And the people who were the other keynote speakers, they were amazingly supportive. And one of them literally said, but you know so much more than the other people. And what helped me was that, when I was first contacted, would you speak at this event, at this conference? What helped me was thinking, I'd like to share, right? I feel really quite passionate about this topic, and I'd like to share my thinking. So, when I think about that, it kind of switches it a little bit away from me, where I think, no, I want this to be a conversation. And so when I think about this is about learning, then that makes it easier. And then, I've read a number of really good books, and the thinking that I wouldn't do it because I'm scared is just something where I think, but I want to learn, and it's such an exciting opportunity, and that actually helps me to deal with it in a way. It doesn't mean that it stops it, but once I've had the experience being on that stage, doesn't mean that I'm no longer nervous, but I'm getting much better at it. And so having that experience, that also helps.
I love that. It sounds like the fear of not doing it, maybe fear is not the right word, but essentially the idea that you wouldn't do it is more negative to you than the idea of pushing through the self-doubt that comes with actually doing it.
Yes, I think that's actually true. There is I've read a really great book quite a while ago by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's the title is You Learn by Living, and just the title is just so wonderful in my ears and in my head, where I think, if I look back, later on in life and think you haven't actually done this before because you were so scared. So, it's that pushing beyond that feeling of being scared, and also thinking, and it happens more in my head than it's sometimes the feeling that supports me. But when I can think it through, that I potentially, even if I failed, I will have learned something. And yeah, as I say, it's more a thought where I think, come on, hang on to this, that sometimes there is a little bit of a feeling where I think, I know how that feels good, so do it, right? But I have to talk to myself to get into that state.
I love that you mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt too, because I live by her quote, do one thing every day that scares you, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I have really internalized that, because for the same reason that you're describing, everything scares me. Everything yes. triggers anxiety and self-doubt. But I know, and it sounds like you have recognized as well, that until you do it, it's always going to be scary. And even when you start doing it, the anxiety is still there, but you start to develop that self-trust, and you realize, you know what, I do have something to share. I do have a perspective that has value in these conversations. And that goes a long way in building that muscle.
Yes. And I think, there's also something about maybe rather than thinking I'm telling people something, maybe saying I'm starting a conversation, and I may not be right and I may not know it all, but if we don't exchange the thoughts on this, then where will we get and where will we find out? And that's actually something. So there's something in me that learning is really important to me, and so if you don't have an exchange, you will not learn. Well, I will not learn is what I think. And so if I think about that, then I think you can, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Don't shut me down. If you do, that's your problem. But rather talk to me.
I love that reframe, because what it does is it prevents you from having to be the expert, the person that knows everything. You are someone who believes strongly in the content and wants to start a conversation. And if other people have perspectives or information that you don't have, then you get to learn something and they get the benefit of now having the opportunity to share what they know. So everybody wins. I think that's such a great way to alleviate some of the pressure that we put on ourselves of having to know everything, because let's face it, we'll never know everything, right? It's impossible.
Yes,
it's an impossible standard that we set for ourselves. So I love what you're describing as, I am interested in starting the conversation, sharing what I do know, and then learning from others. And each time you do that, I would assume that you get new information that you incorporate for the next time.
Yes, that's true. But also it's the experience that, I've had a great conversation, and what would have happened if I just didn't have that, right? I mean, as I say, a lot of times it happens in my head. I don't have that in my feeling, right? Mm. But having had the feeling of that felt really great, I dared to do that, and sometimes it takes me 2, 3, 4 weeks to approach somebody, or maybe even a few months. But, once I've done it, it's yet again, most of the time, it's actually a great experience after that. And that's really encouraging.
And you know what I love too, that you alluded to when you were talking about the Eleanor Roosevelt book, is this idea of looking back and thinking about what you'll regret more. Doing it and potentially failing, whatever that might mean, right? Maybe you trip up a little bit, maybe you don't have your best performance. It's unlikely that it's going to be catastrophic, but it may be uncomfortable in the moment for you. Or would you regret more not doing it at all? And I think that's a really great framework for those of us who are trying to decide whether we want to step outside our comfort zones to use.
Yeah, and I think it's literally, looking back, when I'm, or looking at the point, imagining what it feels like when I sit in my rocking chair when I'm 80 or something like that, and just think, how have I lived my life? And then looking back on thinking this was fulfilling. It was scary in between, but it was actually really fulfilling, because I did learn so much and I was able to give, and to contribute to learning and so on and so forth. So that's really, it's a little bit like a legacy, which is, where I am with my age is getting quite important to me.
And I love that you're so self-aware, because it sounds like you are consciously thinking about these different paths and the options that are available to you and what will happen if you go down one road versus another. I think a lot of people don't have that self-awareness, and they may be trapped in a subconscious fear or a limiting belief that they have about themselves. Have you always had that kind of insight and self-awareness, or did you come here over time?
I have come here over time. I've done, I had psychological support, and I have coaching, and I've had some mentoring, and I've read about it a lot. And that, there is part of it is potentially personality as well, that I'm quite adventurous and curious. So that helps, I have to say. But a lot of it is learning and reading. And when I came out of that very long employment, I read a lot of books as well. And, when I was trying to think about what I want to do, next in my life. And I read a lot of, I don't really like the term self-help books, but, because there's so much really good information in some of these books and thinking. And some of this has helped, and there's a little book, which is, do one thing. This is, it's basically, it's a little book. It's got something that you can do that scares you for every day in a year. And, it's different aspects and so on. And I bought it, and I'm not doing it, but occasionally I just flick through it, right? And so it's, it's something that just has become important to me, and also for now that I need to look after myself. I'm no longer in a community of employees, of staff in an organization where where that may not be important, but now I've actually got to do something because, where's the next piece of work coming from? So it's a little bit really something that where I think you need to do something. Actually, it's potentially not necessarily coming on its own.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it sounds like it's been both something that you have intentionally sought in the form of these personal development types of resources and something that you felt was important to your growth, but also something that you felt was non-negotiable because of the situation that you found yourself in. Now that you've stepped away from being an employee in a traditional structure, you recognized that there were certain things you had to do differently for your own livelihood and your ability to be successful in this new role.
Yeah, that's true. And as I said, it's a great experience when you've gone through it. There is a bit of pride, but there is also relief, and then there is energy that comes with it. That I did it, and it went well, right? And yeah, so and when I talk to people and just say, oh God, I've got to do this presentation and I have no idea what, and they said, Annika, just look at this. You've done this so many times now and it went really well. And I think, yeah, that's actually true, right? So, and yes, you're absolutely right. There will be times when it's not brilliant or when I think I could have done more, but there's something about, and I've read this and I've thought about it. There's something about perfect is boring, which I read somewhere recently. Where I thought, oh, that's a nice way of thinking about it.
I like that because we typically think of perfect as unachievable, but there is something boring about being perfect too. Because as humans, I think we connect to one another much more deeply when the person seems real, when there's authenticity there. And, for us to be able to own when we're nervous, to be able to just say it out loud if we're not feeling like we're at our best, people will appreciate that. And that gives them permission to be vulnerable too.
I think that's actually really true. And, when I think back to that experience when I spoke at my very first conference and how wonderful the other keynote speakers were when I said, I'm so nervous. And the chair of that conference, he heard that as well, and he actually literally came over and sat next to me, and considerably older than I am, and I just felt really nicely held. And he suggested something where he said, look, this is your first time, so when I announce you step onto the stage, onto the podium already, so you have a little bit of time to actually, while I am talking, and I will talk a little bit longer so that you can adjust. And I just thought, this is just really heartwarming, how wonderful these people are. And yeah, so, there is support out as well, because I'm sure everybody has those feelings at some point.
Wow. And what a great thing for you, because you said that out loud, you were able to take advantage of support that would not have been provided if he didn't have that information. And then because he seems to have been someone with compassion and empathy, he did what he was able to do to make the situation more comfortable for you. So What a great story in and of itself, and what a great motivation for people to be more open about their discomfort and know that there are likely people out there that want to be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just very nice. And if you meet people who don't want to be helpful or can't be helpful, then there are other ways. There's friends, there are coaches, there are books, and as I say, very often I stick my brain right in there, when I have these feelings, and it does help. It doesn't make them go away, but it helps me cope.
It sounds like you have gotten to a really good place in your journey with imposter syndrome. And while I generally joke about the fact that it's not something that we can typically cure, it's more so, how do we manage it? How do we get to a place where we recognize our triggers and we know what tools and resources are available to us when we start to experience that. It sounds like you've come to a really good place. I'm sure that it's not perfect for you and that there are still moments when you struggle with it. One question I would like to ask is, if imposter syndrome were not an issue for you, if you had 100% confidence 100% of the time, is there anything that would be different for you in your life? Are there things that you would do or not do as a result of that?
Yeah, potentially, actually. Yeah, I would probably grab opportunities and seek opportunities more, or try to make wonderful ideas come to life without wondering or bothering what might happen around me. So there is, the confidence that when you dare to do something, other things will fall into place and will fall well into place. So setting up a business, overseas or something like that, which is at the moment I'm playing with an idea. And a lot of people ask me also, what happens to your partner? And there's one friend of mine who didn't ask that question when I told her about the idea. And I hugged her afterwards, and she said to me, why would I ask you that question? I could totally trust that you will sort this out, that something will happen and it'll be good. You love each other. And so and that was really interesting. And I think, I would probably have different confidence in pushing other areas in my life forward.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that we are always on a journey. This is definitely not a destination, but something that we're experiencing in everyday life. And each decision, however insignificant it might feel in the moment, is an opportunity for us to believe in ourselves a little bit more, to develop that confidence muscle, to try new scary things that we might not have ever done in the past. So I love what you're sharing with us, which is your own personal journey toward greater confidence and the ways in which you've pushed through some feelings and some experiences that might have held you back if you hadn't had the courage to face them directly. What is it that motivated you to want to have this conversation with me today? What are you hoping that people will take away from what you've shared with us?
Why I wanted this conversation with you was because, this journey isn't over, and occasionally it hits me stronger, the feeling, the bad feelings, and sometimes it's better. And so, I keep exploring, because I've seen when I'm able to step beyond that fear, the amount of energy and power, and I don't mean authoritative power, but the power in terms of energy and happiness that comes with that is actually really great. So that's the part where I think I haven't stopped thinking and exploring this. But I think what I really hope to have been able to share is that, take your heart and jump, in a way, because what you get back is very likely to be beautiful.
I love that so much. It really sounds like what you're saying is that if we are willing to take that leap of faith, we will be rewarded in the end. And that's such a great inspiration to me, and I'm sure so many who are listening and wondering, can I do this? Right? Is this something that I can actually see myself trying? And just knowing that there is intrinsic reward on the other side of that, in the form of this energy that you're describing, in the form of just a positive feeling of accomplishment that comes with having pushed through your fears, I think is just such a strong message that I'm so grateful that you were willing to share with us today. So I want to wish you the best as you continue to pursue opportunities potentially overseas. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you again for leaving us with this great message and sharing your story with us today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Kim, and thank you for talking to me. It's been a real pleasure, also making me actually think things through. Yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks again. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with other women who can benefit from this conversation. Before we go, I want to share some additional resources with you. If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you want to manage it more effectively, I invite you to join my free Impostor Syndrome online challenge. Every day for 7 days, you'll get an email with self-reflection questions and exercises to help you better understand your own experience with imposter syndrome and how to navigate it more effectively. To join the free challenge, visit executivekareersuccess.com/imposter-syndrome-challenge. When you sign up, you'll immediately receive your first message. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of women who engage in candid conversations that generally aren't happening elsewhere, I invite you to join my Leading Women discussion group. On the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern, we meet virtually over Zoom to talk about questions or challenges related to career management, leadership development, and any other relevant topics such as imposter syndrome and confidence. It's always a great discussion with a great group of women. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to be my guest on a future call. Just reach out to me at kim@executivekareersuccess.com and I will share the call details with you. And if you want to join my newsletter to receive tips, insights, and updates, text Leading Women, all one word, to 66866. Finally, consider telling us your story. Contact me to learn more about how you can be a guest on the Impostor Syndrome Files. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.